98 Not Out, sponsored by Shepherd Neame, proud supporters of cricket in Essex.
And we're really pleased to say welcome along to 98 Not Out is Ebony Rainford-Brent. Ebony, how are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no, more than welcome. How you been getting on with lockdown?
Lockdown's weird, right? I don't know how everyone's found it. I think at first, I have to be honest, it was pretty depressing. I'd just come back from the Women's World Cup in Australia, and I'm kind of living the dream.
Amazing
tournament.
Go from that
to, it was an amazing tournament. To go from that to arrive the day of lockdown, so straight into the madness. But I have to say, everything's about adaptability and adjusting. I've got a bit fitter because I've been working out more, connected more with friends, and now ready to get back to the action next week with the test. So all good.
Yeah.
Are you commentating on the test? Have they decided how many you can have in, etc. yet?
Yeah, so basically everyone's gearing up at the moment. I'll be with the Sky team for most of the first part of it. I think the only thing, everyone's got to go through all this biosecure testing over the next couple of days, and I think I'm getting mine done over the next couple of days. So there's two layers, right? You know, you're ready to go, but everyone's just praying everybody stays as fit as possible to get into the game.
Right. I'm shy talking to you, I'll tell you now. Let me tell the listeners who don't know what a woman we have got here. Ebony Rainford-Brent, the first black woman to play cricket for England, a member of the team that won the ICC World Cup in 2009, a World T20 Cup winner also in 2009, captain of the Surrey women's team. On retiring, became Surrey's first director of cricket, and is also one of the first summarisers to join the BBC TMS
Female summarisers.
Female summarisers, yeah. And also a full member of MCC. My God.
Not done a lot then.
But it goes on. As a youngster, good at football, athletics and basketball too. So, what made you focus on cricket?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I loved sport. I had three brothers, and I was the youngest, so I had sort of home environment of I think you just had to play because otherwise you kind of get missed out of everything going on. So I loved sport. I loved football most actually for a long time. Then athletics.
Are you a Palace fan?
No, I was a Liverpool fan. I mean, that's a bit dodgy, isn't it? Because of the 80s, Liverpool ruled in McManaman, Barnes days. So the whole household was obsessed with Liverpool. So I'm a traitor really, considering Palace was only down the road. Do you know, it's one specific lady. There's a lady called Jenny Washdrack, who's one of the first people to talent spot me when I was young and get me from sort of playing street cricket into the system. And she did so many positive things to keep me engaged with cricket, got me scholarships, got me opportunities. I think she kind of knew how to sway me from one sport to another. So I owe her a huge amount for swinging me to cricket eventually.
You had a serious back injury, didn't you, at 19? Which seems to be the cricketer's curse, doesn't it? Back injuries. And how did you deal with that, and how did you make your comeback?
Yeah, my back was pretty. Oh God, I think back on it, it's pretty horrific. Around the age of 19, remember bowling a specific ball, and up at Guildford doing an England training thing, and had a bit of pain, went home, went down to pick up a remote, and never walked properly for another year. Basically, I fell over. It turned out I had 2 prolapse discs, pars defect. It was a nightmare. I was told I might never play sport again. So it's pretty horrific injury, and it took 3 years to get back to the game. I take so much from that, because even though it was one of the worst experiences of my life, I had to leave university. I wasn't able to walk properly for that year, for about a year, and it took a long time to rebuild. But the other thing I would say is it mostly has given me a much more positive and resilient mindset. I think before that, I don't know, you're just a youngster drifting along in life, and then all of a sudden you're thrown something that, you have to be really mentally strong to overcome. So it was a tough time, and I still have to do a lot of work to keep my back going now. But it's definitely worth, going through the experience and looking back on the journey.
Did you get to finish your degree?
Yeah, I did. So I studied chemistry, and I studied at UCL, and I went on to get a master's.
I knew that.
Possibly, if I didn't play cricket, I might have gone on to do my doctorate. So blame cricket for me not being a doctor.
Who's smarter, you or your good friend Isha Guha?
Oh God, we both studied at the same uni.
I know.
She did chemistry. Yeah, she did biochemistry, I did chemistry. But she went on to do the next stage. She's still working towards a doctorate. So on paper, she's got the next level up. But we've kind of matched each other our whole career in terms of broadcasting. We roomed together from like 12, 13 years old, and studied at the same university. We kind of just won't leave each other, and we retired at the same time. So we haven't left each other alone.
But you've beaten her to 98 not out. She used to come on,
exactly.
but you're first. You won.
I'll give her a tip for that and say you're missing out, Ish.
In terms of obviously where women's cricket is at the moment, your cricketing era now, that sort of the last 10, 15 years, you really are going to be pioneers for the women's game, aren't you? I think people will look back as this is a time where the women's game really has exploded and become far more mainstream. Yeah,
massively. It's changed so much. I mean, I was our generation, and that's even me and Isha's generation. And if we're honest, crowds were non-existent, funding was non-existent. We worked hard, but we weren't as athletic. It's a different level now. To have a packed-out Lords in 2017. Just came back from Australia, where the crowd was like nearly 90,000 people watching.
Yeah. Katy Perry.
The contracts, the girls get paid nicely now. I remind them that back in our day, we didn't have so much. So it's moved so far. And I think that's wider society. I think that's women's sport in general. We just have been part of some of the generations that have helped sort of pave some of the way. But it's exciting that the future and the potential is ridiculous. So it's been brilliant to be part of.
And as a member of MCC, you must be thrilled about Claire Connor being appointed the president of MCC when Kumar's term ends. Yeah,
look, first of all, Claire's amazing what she's done for the game. And I think, MCC are trying to, obviously show the direction that they're going. And I think Claire is the perfect person. She is, she's strong-minded. She knows exactly what she wants to achieve. I can't think of anyone better for that role than her, that could sort of give it the direction that it's looking for, a bit of diversity, as well as, maintain the values that MCC have. So, no, really pleased for her. I messaged her just to say well done, because I think she is a perfect appointment.
I think I know who's going to be the second female president of the MCC.
Who's that? Isha Guha.
Well, second or third, you might have to be. One may have to follow the other.
Or joint.
Isha Guha.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, it's interesting you talk about yes, progress. I still think that work needs to be done, though, because we've talked about on this programme about the 100. And there's a big disparity between what the boys are getting paid and what the ladies are getting paid. That needs work, because it's a good idea to have the two competitions, the two running parallel and intertwined with each other. But I still think that more needs to be done to level things up a bit, because I think ladies cricket, girls cricket has really got an audience and a following now. And as you said about the World Cup in Australia just recently, there were people in the stadiums, but more importantly, there were people here on TVs watching it and being involved and supporting it. So
look, I completely agree with you. I think a few things. So one, I think and this is me coming sort of from understanding some of the commercial stuff behind it. I think there's an approach that we can't expect it to all happen overnight, but we definitely want to see that progress. What Australia have done really well, I think they've kind of broken the cycle a bit. They were ahead in terms of their Women's Big Bash, so their domestic competition was on TV. They were paying the players, better earlier. They were playing their domestic players, bearing in mind we're only just starting to get these women's central regional contracts. Australia have been doing that for a number of years. And I think by doing that, that's what's allowed them to have such a successful domestic setup where, people are watching the games, they're turning up to the games, and then that allows more money to go back into the women's game. I think we're making some positive strides. We're mostly behind Australia in terms of their structure and how they set it up. A lot more of their domestic players are getting paid, which means they can focus on cricket. The standard goes up, and then it's a better product for TV. So I think they've broken that cycle quicker. I feel like we're going in the right direction. My only nervousness really is this current pandemic is slowing the progress for women's watches generally, and I don't want that to be lost. So, it's about keeping the foot on the gas, and I think these domestic contracts that are coming in for women are pretty powerful at the moment.
I know it's difficult for the ECB to balance everything. There is a little bit of a worry that they don't seem to be mentioning what's going to happen with the women's professional game and stuff like that, do they? To get a return somewhere.
Yeah, I think that what I understand and what I'm hearing is there's still talk of some of the tri-series that's meant to take place towards later in the summer. So we would have had India here, sort of coming up not too far from now, and then South Africa later. And I think they're trying with these sort of biosecure centres to see if they can, create something later on in the summer. I think everyone's positive. Also, there's talk that the domestic, the men's domestic is starting back in August, and they're just sort of hashing that out, the schedule. I think the women's, there's an opportunity for that. So you're right. It's unfortunate that it's kind of had to be sidelined a little bit, and I think that's a reflection on not just our sport, but many that are going through that same process. But the one thing I would say is, it's going to be vital to have, broadcast cricket, good level competition, so it's not lost this summer. So I really do hope that the tri-series and the domestic competition gets underway.
Is it? I mean, obviously, the biosecure and the cost of everything, is that likely to be the biggest stumbling block to get something on?
Yeah, look, we've been going through everything we need to do to get in. I mean, there's a million forms, the cost for PPE, hand sanitizers, checks, temperature checks daily, all this sort of stuff. It's ridiculous costs. When I say ridiculous, they are what they have to be because, we need to maintain everybody's safety. But I suppose to maintain those standards and maintain players feeling comfortable, and let's be honest, that is also important. I know West Indies have been pretty brave to come over, but to do that, I suppose for the women's game, they've had to look at, how can they replicate that? Would they put it in the same centres? Would they have to do it at other grounds? And all those sort of costs have caused questions. And I think, let's face it as well, broadcast income is why everything that's been prioritised has been getting the international cricket played. That money needs to stay in the game because, ECB have had to deal with the fact that, there's a lot of income that has been lost this summer, 100, etc. So that's been the priority, and I think now everybody starts to get their ducks in a row to be able to organise the domestic men's and women's and international women's as well.
Talking about women's cricket, there's an interesting thing which came out. It's been talked about, I know, for a few years now, but no progress seems to be made in it, about women playing with a different size cricket ball to the men's, because women's hands, on average, are not as big as men's hands, so the ball effectively feels bigger, and you can't do so much with it. But a smaller ball, why's not that hasn't been addressed more productively?
In what sense? So we've used a 5-ounce ball. I mean, since how long I played with a 5-ounce ball, and the men play with a 5.5. So what do you mean in terms of
diameter, the actual size of it?
Yeah. So you're saying we should have a bigger ball or
smaller?
Oh, we do have a smaller ball. Yeah, we use a 5-ounce. So the men use 5.5, and the women use 5. That's been in place for a long time. I think the bigger question that people keep going on about, which I'm not sure I really agree with, is shortening of pitches. So, a lot of people have been vocal about it. I think women's pitches should be shortened. But I don't see the need to shorten the pitch. Women historically have played on the same. You look at, you're not shortening a women's 100 metres to a women's 80 metres, are you?
No.
It's the length that has been structured and everybody's comfortable with. I think with the ball, the reason why it has been smaller, it needed to be smaller just to make sure that, it fitted the hands appropriately. And that's been in place for a long, long time. But when it comes to the pitches and pitch length, for me, I say just let it be what it is. I love the way the women's game has progressed. We're seeing more power, but we also see a different style of cricket. You see more twos than just sort of stand up back sometimes than you do in the men's game. And I enjoy that element of it, and a lot of people do as well. So, there's so many debates. A lot of people have quite heated views on it. But I'm massively a fan of it as it is.
Do you see women's? How do you see it progressing over the next sort of 10 years? Do you see, as women become more professional, more power hitters, and more, some of the ladies will get the opportunity to become more athletic and train more and that sort of thing, and work on their skills more?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I mean, we've seen. Someone like Nat Siver, for example, whacks a ball further than anyone that would have been in the generation I played with. Charlotte Edwards and Isha and stuff like that. Claire Taylor was maybe the closest, and she could hit a good ball. But you're seeing players so dynamic. There's a young cricketer called Shafali Verma from India who's 16.
Yeah, 16, yeah.
And absolutely beasts it. And it's just ridiculous how much. And I think that's in the next generation. She's growing up with no fear. She's not overly engineered. It's just come out and express yourself and play with freedom. And so for me, I think it's where the game will go is just the next generation will all come up being able to paddle, reverse sweep, hit it out the park. And also because it's going to be more attractive financially, kids might choose cricket over other sports, which I think is important, that we attract talent. I'm being selfish here, but I don't want to see all of the talent. I sometimes look at netballers who are probably 6'1", 6'2", and real athletes, and I think, I wouldn't mind stealing a few more of those into our game. So, I think it's moving in the right direction. But equally, I also don't want to just try and mimic the men's game, because I think there are elements of the women's game it's sometimes technically better to look at. I do enjoy, the twos and threes that sometimes build a different sort of game. Then I can't remember seeing a three in the men's game for a long time. But it's definitely moving in the right direction, and I think it's just going to keep getting better and better.
Where I think women's cricket has a huge advantage over men's cricket in terms of playing is that women's cricket, you seem to be able to get into it and progress at a much younger age. Now, you were talking about the recent World Cup. There were so many teenagers that were playing that and in part of it, and if you look at the international scene, there are a lot of youngsters that are playing. So when girls are sort of learning at clubs when they're very young, coming through the sort of the Dynamos and the All-Star schemes, it's quite a quick process if they stick at it to get to a high level, where for boys I think it's a much more arduous route to get to the top.
I think the slight difference, I suppose, is numbers, right? So in the guys' games or the boys' games, it's just like loads of kids playing, right? It's just the boys have every team for every age group you can think of. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 teams. To actually stand out and come through sometimes needs a bit of work. Whereas in the women's game, which is growing, and there are more club sections, but I still think a talent can come out of nowhere and surprise you quite quickly in the women's game. If you possess a natural athletic ability, plus you pick up the technique quickly, all of a sudden you could be in a junior setup, you'd go in the junior setup, and quite quickly you could move into a junior England performance program. So I just think it's a numbers thing that, there's less playing, but if you stand out, you can make ground quickly. So in that sense as well, it's quite exciting from a women's perspective that, a bit like Shafali Verma just burst through in India, and she didn't go through the whole sort of rigmarole of under this, under that. She just dominated. I think there's still room for that in the women's game, which I think is really fun.
Now, before you go, I just want to ask you one more question.
Go on.
We're so pleased that you've given the time to talk to us, and I thank you so much. But one thing's been bugging me, and I have to ask you before you go. Which is better, a fiberglass kayak or an inflatable kayak?
Yeah, I almost wiped myself out at the beach the other day. That's a really good question. I for the listeners who don't know, I went down towards Campersound. It was actually so packed I had to move up to Winchelsea Beach, and I took an inflatable kayak. I bought one. I think they're better. Do you know what? You can just chuck it in your boot. It's sort of size of I don't know, maybe a big rucksack, and you can just blow it up anywhere. I mean, there is that.
But what happens if a wave comes along?
Well, you lose your phone. I mean, I've actually only just got my phone back. Actually, this is the first phone call I've had on my new phone. That's really my other one. Do you know what the problem was? I tried to take a selfie whilst out in the middle of the sea, and then a nice wave came along which had different ideas. So I can see it and find my phone. It's still kind of like going along the coastline, which is pretty embarrassing.
I've got a feeling it's probably had it now.
I think it's done. It should be done by now. If not, someone's going to find a serious fine.
Ebony, it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure to have you on the show. It really is amazing, and you've been so informative and so entertaining. So we thank you so much for that, and we hope to see you back on our screens and back on our radios very, very soon.
No worries at all. Thanks so much.